all the other consequences of having a frictionless, or the benefits of having a frictionless journey. You have people that are happier. Aside from the monetary savings of $6,650, like, there are other benefits as well. So I think not understanding that the friction is actually costing the business money is an unintended consequence.
Some of the best shops that I feel like I've personally done is when messaging that I receive back from the team is like, we got your lead, here's what to expect now. Like, the next thing you can do are you have these options, right? So you can either schedule a tour, and then when they also just tell me like, you're gonna see some emails from us, but I'm the live human being. So I'm the person you can talk to if you need like an email chain to come back to and know that you're going to get a live person.
Okay, I'm here first with Shelly. Shelly, please tell us who you are.
Yes. Hi, my name is Shelly Steitz, and I am a senior consultant with Cadence Marketing Solutions.
Excellent. Shelly, known you for years.
Yes.
Brian, you're next.
I'm Brian Rosenblatt. I'm the marketing director with Goldfarb Properties out of New York.
Excellent. And Anne.
My name is Ann Baum, and I'm the VP of Marketing at Towne Properties, and we're based out of Cincinnati, Ohio.
And both of you are new friends to me, but welcome.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
I'm glad
You
we're
guys-
friends now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, I'm pretty freewheeling with that business card. All right, well, you guys recently pulled together a bunch of data and then did a presentation on friction within the technology stack, within your team, and there's one other component there. What was that?
Well, the consequences of not having a smooth process between the two, the tech stack and your team.
Yeah, so let's kick it off. Shelly, you helped pull some research together with Stride, so tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so Cadence does Stride assessments, which basically measures a property's entire customer journey from the digital online presence all the way through the handoff to the on-site team, and then through a live video tour and any follow-up after that. So we really see the full customer journey, and in that, it's a really great way to diagnose where there might be any breakdowns. And there's a lot, and I know Ann and Brian have experienced that at their properties. And what we really tried to do was point out common areas where we see those breakdowns happen and how to solve for them. And it's really kind of it's hard to say that there's like one thing that everybody's not doing that's the issue. It's honestly different for every property, and that's why it's really important to constantly audit your processes to try to locate where those disruptions happen.
Yeah, it might be something is what I like to think of it like journey. When people talk about customer journey, a lot of times they'll remember the old Google Zmot. Do you remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it was like this timeline of the and Google Zmot was zero moment of truth is what Google called it.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it would be like, all right, they have an idea to buy a car, and then they like go online to search, and they go to your website and they fill out a form. The challenge with that is it was very it pretended like the 2,000 people coming to the apartment website each month do the exact same thing.
Yeah.
And that's not real life.
I
and
call that the myth of the perfect lead.
okay. And so then, Brian, you might have a property where you have someone finds you on search and they come in, and then they maybe they fill out a contact form or maybe they call you, right? And it can sort of put them down these different funnels, and those can get disrupted for a number of reasons. Do you have any examples of where that happened to you guys?
Constantly. So one thing we talked about is if an ILS or a new vendor that we're using introduces like a new lead form type or a new marketing offer, and Anne had this in her part of her presentation where she was saying if the guest card doesn't match up, so if there's no move-in date or if there's no budget or one of the fields just isn't matching, those leads are going nowhere. So we kind of see that pretty frequently at different properties where things are just mismatching. So what's been helpful for us is having that source of truth from whatever marketing source, from our CRM, and seeing what that discrepancy is and seeing those percentages.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Got it. And how did you catch that instance?
By accident. So I was working on a project, and part of the project implementation was realizing that there were required fields for a guest card to be created in our CRM, and it was like email and phone number. Well, not all of the marketing sources require an email and a phone number. It really depends. And so that was kind of a light bulb moment of like, oh, well, maybe we have a technical breakdown here.
Mm-hmm.
Totally. Yeah, we've had examples with like DNI. If you guys have a lot of
Yeah.
experience with it, Shelly, I know you do with like the call tracking, and you might have 3 or 4 vendors that are trying to do different DNI on your website for different reasons,
Right.
and one of them can switch something, and their JavaScript can overwrite someone else's JavaScript, and it's very challenging to catch.
Yeah.
Um,
I also think that there is so many opportunities for, you kind of mentioned this a little bit earlier, that there's many different ways that a prospect can actually reach your property. And even when I was on the corporate marketing side, I had a straight audit done on one of my properties, and I thought it was going to go really well. I
Mhm.
thought that they're going to be like, "This is the best we've ever seen,"
Yeah.
and because I really wanted to test out some new autoresponders that I had put on the property. I really wanted to see how somebody else received that messaging. And what happened was they discovered a form fill I did not realize was on my website and filled it out, and it did not go create a guest card. They totally circumvented the system. They never saw those auto responses. So it was really like eye opening. I was like, you know, I was glad that I was able to catch it, that it was caught and that we could fix it. But yeah, it did not really go as planned.
Totally. Yeah, it's interesting because you set something up and you're like, okay, this isn't a I don't know. I'm trying to think of like something mechanical where it's like we forgot to oil the gears or something, and that's what, and it broke down. You think like I set up this machine and this machine should always be working.
Yeah.
And then we've learned, I mean, us in particular with our like technology development, it took me a long time to get used to the fact that like we've got a lot of maintenance. And before I knew it, like 60% of like what our tech team was writing was like maintenance code. I was
Yeah.
like, this doesn't make any like I feel like that it should be I was thinking like 10% maintenance, not 60% maintenance. And so then it just, when you become these big, particularly technology platforms like an Entrada, RealPage, whatever, you're spending so much time just trying to keep the lights on
Yeah.
versus like trying to innovate on anything. And that can be really challenging for folks in your guys' position where you have, I don't know, 40 or 50 properties that you're monitoring and you're like, well, I set that website up. Why'd it go down? It's like someone's, I don't know, URL expired. We didn't know because this other person bought it or something and whatever. There's silly mistakes.
Yeah, and the important thing to remember with that too is we often feel this shame when we find those disruptions or when we find those things that broke down, and you don't really even want to talk about it because you feel this embarrassment. Like I think that there's this presumption that like marketing should be on top of it at all times and know exactly what's happening at all times, and the reality is it's not a matter of if but when you're going to find those broken down pieces, that phone number that doesn't work, that form fill that's not going into your CRM. What's really important is how you actually resolve the issue. Like you have to take a breath and just say, I'm really glad we caught that, and then fix the issue. And that's the more important part is what is your process to actually, 1, find the disruptions, and then 2, resolve the issue.
Fix them. I think that's interesting too because you're right. It's not a matter of if but when. And something we talked about in our presentation is there are at least 23 marketing sources that a property can exist on. And actually I was talking to Carla from Satisfax and she's like, Anne, there's actually like 46. And I was like, okay, that's too much. Like, stop it. I'm like, you're scaring me. So I'll stick with my 23 right now. But that is 23 different marketing sources for one property. So times that by 100 properties, and I can't do the math, but that's a lot. And so, there is bound to be friction in that. And so setting up processes, understanding that there might be an issue. Our recommendation there was to have regular digital audits that the marketing team and the on-site teams were both conducting. So that really, because it's just a lot. It's a lot to keep track
That's
of.
been a really big thing for us is building in a culture where it's not the marketing department's fault or the IT department's fault or this. We're all in this together, and when we just notice something that fails or stumbles, I'm the first to say, hey, I failed here, but we all also failed here, and I'll call out, maybe it's not the most positive thing in the world, call us all out, we all like dropped the ball on this, and what are we going to do now to make it better? And I think now there's more of a culture as opposed to the past where it's more siloed, like, oh, that's marketing's tool that they use. It's like, no, we're all using these tools together. And if you spot something, if you see something broken, say it. It's okay. It's actually a good thing. And the people who are the ones that spot out mistakes or spot out like points of friction, those are the teammates I love. Like those are the best people. And some people might find it like, oh, I'm being annoying by putting in support tickets or whatever. But I
Yeah.
go to those people all the time because I know they're on top of it. They're watching things and they care about what they're doing. So
It's
I
like
really value that.
you said New York, right?
Yeah.
Brian, I just remember it's like in New York they have when I lived there, it was like if you see something, say something.
That's exactly.
Yeah, kind of.
I think of that all the time because like I
Yeah.
almost want to put up posters around that say that because
Yeah.
I think for a long time, certain places maybe have a culture of just like everything's fine and everything's fine. Don't like
Yeah.
if I don't make a commotion, nothing will
Mhm.
happen. But there's always something to evolve or fix. And
I had a vendor recently call that if something makes you sort of squint your eyebrows and go, that's when you should speak up.
Very
yeah,
interesting.
Yeah, but my team thought my face got frozen like that, so I don't know. What do I do then?
Maybe then you're not the source.
Yeah.
No camera calls.
Yes,
Exactly.
Yeah, totally.
But I think, I mean, less of people seeing you do that, but
Okay.
more your internal sort of gut check.
Yeah.
Was what we're using that on. Maybe there's a different tell that we gotta use with you,
Yeah,
David.
totally. Yeah, I think it definitely feels frozen sometimes. Well, Anne, you had mentioned on a certain frequency do these audits. What have you settled on? Like, what is good enough without like sort of being a time waster?
Yeah, I would say a monthly basis at the bare minimum, just to make sure that leads are flowing properly, that information is correct and kind of consistent between 23 different sources. From a monthly standpoint is reasonable.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that would probably scare a lot of people, but
Well, you can also make it more bite-sized. One way that I've done it in the past is to have just the on-site teams maybe look at one section of their marketing. So maybe it's this month you're looking at your website, or next month it's reviewing all of your ILS listings. So it's not like you're doing this entire deep dive every month, that it can be kind of these bite-sized pieces that
Yeah.
are spread out over the year.
that reminds me of how like a lot of companies will handle their SEO. It's like, okay, right now we're doing homepage optimizations, and
Yeah.
we're moving on to neighborhood page and then that way you're keeping it fresh. Because we've also all seen like I don't know if you guys read the book Checklist Manifesto.
No.
Oh, it's really good for this process. It's pretty short. It's
Yeah.
worth the read, but it's basically about how like it's important. Like pilots do the same thing all the time, and so like before they have their checklist before they start a plane, but they basically know by muscle memory why have an actual physical piece of paper that they're checking it off on. So that's kind of what the book's about.
Right.
And anyways, you can when people do the same thing over and over, they can often become blind to it. So like if you're the pilot without the checklist, you're like, yeah, whatever, you're throwing your switches or whatever, and someone texts you or interrupts you, and you just like you short circuit for a second, you forget something that becomes essential basically for what you're doing, and so you have redundancies, and that's kind of what the book talks about. And we suffered with it with our team. So like Digible, we launched 8 years ago, and we went from 3 people to 130 people today, and we have thousands of campaigns running. And it's very easy when you do something 1,000 times that all of a sudden you're like, yeah, I know this. And so in our project management system, we had to figure out, okay, we have a task, and then underneath that task, there's subtasks. So there's like let's go back to the D&I. To add call tracking. Call tracking is one task, but then it has all these subtasks within it that are like, okay, did you place GTM, or did you generate the code from here and drop it in there? And we found the experienced people were just like, whatever, complete the task. Like it not going through the subtasks. And they were like, it's too much, it's laborious. I had to launch 20 campaigns today, so if there's 10 tasks for the 20, it's like that adds up a lot. So it's been a iterative process, because you want the subtasks there for the brand new people that have never launched a campaign. So like totally. And then what do you do with the experienced people that are also stepping in and doing it? And then we've played with models where it's like, let's have someone that's like kind of like an entry level position that does all this, and then the experienced person takes over, so the experienced person isn't bored by it. Then what we struggle with is kind of where you were talking, Brian, where it's like we're all in this together. We struggle with that a little bit, because we're like, who's then responsible? Like, who is the person, like, where you can say this is the breakdown? It's the onboarding person, or is it the owner, right? The strategic person. So anyways, I'm just curious if you guys have any thoughts on that.
I think there's like different types of audits too. So like the ones that are a little bit more public facing, it's not something I'm doing currently, but it kind of sparked an idea to have like different property teams audit different properties, because they might have a totally different
That's a good
viewpoint.
idea.
And we have all these like teammates at our disposal, sometimes they don't even know anything about this other property. And a lot of our company is kind of siloed, like between different regions and different building types. They might have a fresh set of eyes because just because we're sitting in marketing, we might not think of something one way.
Yep.
But I almost wonder if there's an opportunity there to like
That's our most recent.
front-facing marketing
Like
person.
peer review.
Yeah.
That's actually our most recent iteration of this process. So late last year, we had an issue where we're like, oh, we want to re-audit these things. And so what we had is a peer review process, like you're talking about, Anne, where someone from a different team, so someone builds it, someone from a different team audits it, but then you still have the person that's going to be running that account long-term is responsible. So as other people did the onboarding and the QA, but ultimately, if for whatever reason you finish, let's say 2 months go by and you see 0 phone calls.
Yeah.
Well, that's a problem because our core KPI is leads. And so if you see no phone calls, that's an issue. And so they're still responsible. It's just you had help from these other people, right? And so that was important for us to get down. Now, if for some reason at the very beginning we see this person that's launching always makes the same error, okay, we need to address that. Maybe it's the wrong position for them, but we still wanted to make sure that someone owned it. I'll give one more example here, but we have built a lot of our own tech. We have, I don't know, 20, 25 people on our tech team. And so there's a lot of automations they will do for our like campaign managers, like running a Google campaign. And so it used to be the Google campaign manager was in charge of pacing. So it's like, I want to spend $1,000 this month. And they had no automation. They just had to handle it as a human handles it.
Right.
Then we were like, hey, that's kind of mind-numbing work oftentimes. Yeah. So let's have a computer do it. And then the computer messed up, it glitched and pasted incorrectly. And we said, well, and there was like finger pointing. It's like, well, the tech team like effed that up. It's like, hey, it's still your responsibility. You own this campaign. They just gave you a tool in order to accomplish the task, but it's still your responsibility. So that was some of the communication we've had to handle internally when sort of this friction arises.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing too, I think when you're doing these deep dives, I think you want to be cognizant of when you're doing them. So one of the things that we were looking at is doing them on a property that's performing well and a property that isn't. So you can compare the two to see how they compare to each other, and that can really enlighten where there are some breakdowns across your whole entire portfolio. Because if you're having the same thing break down at both properties, it's likely a portfolio-wide issue. So you don't necessarily have to do it on every property. You can be a little bit more selective. Or if you have a property that's performing well and it doesn't have a lot of friction, that's usually a good indicator of where there's maybe some breakdowns within the property that's performing poorly. You have that kind of baseline to compare. The other time that we really look at them as well is after you onboard some new technology. So if you switch CRMs or if you add a chatbot to your website, like that's a really good time to do some of these assessments and audits. And another time is if you just onboarded a property. So doing it before you onboard the property and after. Same with like adding that text. So doing it before and after so you can see what the difference is between the two. Kind of having that comparative to help you identify where the breakdown happens.
And then Brian and Ann, are you guys centralized in the tech stacks that you use, or do they vary by property?
They're centralized.
Yeah, we're also centralized, luckily.
Yeah, that makes it easier.
I was going to say, like, when you have third party and you have all these different players, that can be super challenging.
Yeah, and that's one of the things we talked about was really trying to have consistent workflows across your different teams as much as you can. Certainly, if you're a third party and you're using different tech stacks, that makes it a little bit more challenging. But the more that you can have consistency in the process, the easier it'll be to identify when breakdown does occur. Because if someone's not doing it right, you can usually see it right away.
And a thing that came up too is just because you have a centralized platform and everyone's using the same technology does not mean they're using the technology in the same way.
Yeah.
So like I know I've uncovered, and it's a little hard to like coax it out, but you realize, oh wait, you do have an Excel file of leads outside of the CRM. Why? And then you learn, like, and you try to get that feedback to say, like, is it because the CRM's not working? Because there's a training issue? Because it's too hard? Because it's too slow?
Because leads if our leads not going into the CRM and you download
or
that
they're
from
doing
the marketing source.
We found they're doing both. They have it in the CRM and they're also using the Excel because of our process or something that's not matching up. So I think providing a mechanism to get that feedback is really important, and it takes a lot of trust within your team and an environment where it's like you're not going to be in trouble if you don't use the CRM. Just tell us why
Right. So we
Yeah.
can
why
figure
that's
it out.
happening. Yeah, and we'll work on this together.
I think the nice thing too about identifying friction is that it's easy when you have a set of KPIs that you're tracking on a portfolio and a property level, because it makes it really easy to see where a breakdown or where friction might exist based on those KPIs. And so when we're talking about like a centralized tech stack versus non-centralized, like something that never changes is what you want success to look like.
Yeah.
And so although it might be harder to manage multiple tech stacks or whatever the case may be, ultimately it's all trackable because you have KPIs in place.
Yeah. In my experience, not all of those clients have that figured out yet. Some of our clients, we were just talking about this with, shoot, who was it? Michelle Smith. But anyways, we were like how some ownership groups want certain KPIs, and then but corporate of the property management company has different ideas of the KPIs, and how do we then try to like work together and integrate one another? Because the ownership group is ultimately the customer, right, of the
Yes.
management company, and so you want to kind of do what they do, but then corporate may have a different idea of like what they want to see for standardization across the board. And our conversation there was how can the vendor help bridge that gap a little bit without pointing fingers and saying he said, she said,
Right.
and serving two masters. So yeah, to that point, Anne, what do you have you ever attempted to maybe connect your vendors together and to help with this some of this issue?
No.
Okay, fair.
No, I mean, when we're talking about KPIs, I'm thinking specifically about the prospect journey, and so the stages along the way.
I
And
see.
so from that standpoint, that all lives within our CRM. It lives within one place already. So
Yeah.
no, I haven't, although we have, sometimes connected vendors if a technical breakdown or something exists. But from a metric standpoint, although what you're talking about is interesting because that seems to be a really big topic right now. Like I know at RetCon, a lot of the conversation was about standardizing data language. Like before a company can implement a data strategy, the very first thing that needs to occur is to have like a data glossary, right? Or like a data dictionary
Yeah.
for that particular company, because you could have five
Yeah.
people. I mean, heck, even if you asked Shelly, Brian, and I to define one particular thing, we'd probably come up with three different answers. And so when you're talking about the opportunity for vendors to help, that might be facilitating a conversation around, when we use this language, what does that actually mean?
Yeah. What's a lead?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Seen that time and time again. Yeah.
What's a lead and what's a unique lead? Because
Yeah.
they're not the same
Yep.
across different
Yeah.
platforms, I've discovered.
Actually, that happened in the session yesterday. I was using
Yeah.
the term lead when I actually meant prospect, and someone asked, "Are you talking about leads or prospects?" I was like,
Yeah.
"I'm actually talking about prospects." I don't know why.
So how do you differentiate it?
Is
Now
that
I'm
a market
curious.
qualified
So a
lead,
lead
or?
is everything that comes in,
Mhm.
and then a prospect is all the leads less vendor calls, duplicates, unqualified,
Yeah.
etc. So that's how we define it.
Makes
But
sense.
but again, I even messed that up and used the wrong.
It's easy to do.
And
Yeah.
well, and I also think that some people just use lead and prospect interchangeably. Like they don't
Yeah.
have that differentiator between like everything that's come into the property and then what's actually like
Like a workable.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes.
Well, it strikes me as what Brian said earlier about sort of making it a safe space for everybody. Like that person obviously felt safe enough to ask you,
Yeah.
like a lead or prospect, which takes a lot of courage in today's environment. A lot of people they don't want to look silly or dumb or whatever, like ignorant. And so, Brian, I just think it was an important point that you made earlier, that you need to make people feel safe, that it's okay to bring
Yeah.
this stuff to light, and hopefully, I think you were saying you sort of like champion them for doing that. So
I
Yeah.
really hope so. And another thing for me too is we're talking about like the lead journey and that point of contact. I always want to know, why are they contacting us? And I feel like it's hard to sometimes aggregate data on the inflection point of why did they submit that lead form? Is it because they wanted to schedule a tour? Is it because they had the question? And making sure like that discussion point is like is reported in some way, because I find it's really hard to do
That's
that.
interesting.
I've been trying to do it a little bit with like our conversational AI tool, but be like, why are we not providing info? Do they just want to talk to a human? Are there different breakdowns? And but what is the reason that point in time they reached out to us? Because I don't think we always get that. It's just like, oh, there's a contact us.
Yeah,
It's just
Yeah.
generic.
it's tough. I mean, it's getting better with like data enrichment and categorization and like conversational AI, but it's still, you can almost get like data overload because it's like, okay, I want to start tagging it with all these different things, but then that becomes very noisy. And
Yep.
so we go through this constant process of like over I don't know, saving data, if you will, then or enriching it, and then under enriching because we want to
Yeah.
we want 5 categories so that when we talk to Shelly, we know it's like our conversational AI that we built. It's like we want 5 categories so that someone can remember them all versus having like 7. And then we're like, okay, well now that we have 5, so that I can report it to Shelly on a call, like this is a lead. Now I need tagging in the background because it's like, well, what kind of lead was it? She wants to know how many were 2 bedrooms versus 1 bedrooms or whatever. Yeah, it's just it's back to that iterative process. It's
Yeah.
Do you guys get triggered when you hear like the lead is bad?
Oh, all the time.
What
Or they're
does
all
that
unqualified,
mean?
right?
But what does that mean?
yeah,
Let's go deeper.
yeah.
I think the intent, that is very fascinating, Brian. I've never thought about that. Like, what is the intent behind, because it's a very natural reaction. You want to get in touch with a business, and we're telling people to do that, by the
Yeah,
way.
contact
we're saying,
us.
fill out this form,
Yeah.
contact us. But then if they're not right, it's like, do they expect a phone? Because then it becomes about personality and expectations from a prospect standpoint. Do they expect a phone call within 20 seconds because they submitted a lead versus just not being able to find your self-scheduled calendar for your tour? I mean,
Yeah.
that's really
Or
fascinating.
did they try
I
to
love
call?
that.
Did they try to call? They couldn't get through to someone, and then
And then
they
they
tried to
Yeah.
submitted
contact
a
us.
lead.
I bet that's relatively frequent. But how do you
And
track that?
I think that kind of goes back to like making sure that your teams are trained on what the customer journey is, right? Some of the best shops that I feel like I've personally done is when the messaging that I receive back from the team is like, we got your lead. Here's what to expect now. Like
Yeah.
Yep.
the next thing you can do are you have these options, right? So you can either schedule a tour.
Yeah.
And then when they also just tell me like, you're going to see some emails from us and but I'm the live human being, so I'm the person you can talk to if you need like an email chain to come back to and know that you're going to get a live person.
That's a great point. Setting expectations.
Mm-hmm.
I just went through that where I was finding a new doctor, and I think I had 4 conversations with that team before deciding on the doctor. But I was talking with my wife Nicole. I was like,
Yeah.
what's next? When are we done with their sales process? I'm not sure. We were getting somebody that's quarterbacking all of our healthcare, and so it was different than just getting, in a good way, the referral where
Yeah.
you normally like, you must use this person, good luck.
Yeah.
And so I liked that it was more than that, but it also felt very mysterious and opaque. I was like, how long is the sales process, and have I gotten everything yet? So they didn't do a great job of saying, and I gave that feedback. I was like, hey, just so you know, please, yeah, you may want to document this process and show me up front in call number 1. These are the stages.
Yeah. And it goes back to my point earlier about that myth of the perfect lead, that like everyone who calls knows exactly what to say and exactly what to do. We have this bias where we think that the lead already knows what their next line is, that they're calling and they're saying, hi, my name's Joe and I'm ready to take a tour.
Yeah.
They actually don't know. They're calling to help have you guide them through that process. And that's where I think it's really important that we keep training our teams on those sort of soft, like, this is the next thing. This is where we're going now.
You're reminding me of my dream. I've always had this dream of a Domino's pizza tracker for our industry, especially
I can't believe you said that.
No, I want a centralized model. We know where you're at in the funnel. Here's what to expect for next steps. You see like the progress bar moving along. I see the exact like what it should be. And then
Don't say that out loud.
I know.
Brian.
I give away all my ideas. That's like my number one thing.
That's the exact example though we've used internally for
Yeah.
for when Shelly was a client of ours.
Yeah.
Hey, we want a Domino's pizza tracker so Shelly can see where in the bake process it is.
Yeah.
Like, okay, we've got your assets, now we're building campaign, now we're launching, now we're reporting. That I just can't believe you said Domino's because it's the exact visual. It's so did you
And
know
the best thing is it's fake. It's all fake.
what's the Domino's pizza tracker isn't real?
It's gotta be. Like, do you think someone's hitting the button of like the pizza in the oven?
I don't know, maybe because don't they have to
Oh,
hell, I
But
don't know.
who knows?
I think
But it's all mental.
There
Like
has to be something like, I mean, we're going to start debating the Domino's pizza tracker,
Yeah,
but
let's
there
go.
has to be like something in their process that triggers like
At least the
The
delivery
tracker,
part.
yeah.
Yeah, that part for sure.
Yeah. At one point, I read they had 300 engineers, and I was like, all right, what are they doing with 300 engineers? And that's how I discovered the pizza tracker thing. I was
Yeah.
also was like, but does
Yeah.
it take 300 engineers? But maybe it does, Brian, for like to know that the pizza.
Maybe I should give them more credit. It's real.
Well, I wanted to move into unintended consequences.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, yeah, who wants to start?
Oh my gosh. Okay. Unintended consequences of friction. So I would say the one that I love the most is inefficient marketing spend. And so I don't have my chart in front of me, but I'll try and walk through this. Let's say there's a property that needs 10 leases and you have a friction-filled journey. So your prospect to lease, I used it right this time, your prospect to lease conversion rate is 5% because you have a friction-filled journey. Let's say your leads, prospects cost $50 each. It is going to take you 200 leads, prospects, to get your 10 leases, and it's going to cost you $10,000. If you have a smooth journey, your conversion rate hopefully is at 15%. All of a sudden, you only need 67 prospects to get those 10 leases, and it's only going to cost you $3,350. So you're saving $6,650 because you have a frictionless prospect journey.
You did that with no notes.
I'm so
blown
impressed
away.
right now. I can't remember my phone number.
Yeah.
I could see it in my mind. But like that's a huge
Yeah.
I mean, just by impacting, by the way, all the other consequences of having a frictionless or the benefits of having a frictionless journey, you have people that are happier, whatever, I'm not going to go into them right now, but like aside from the monetary savings of $6,650, like there are other benefits as well. So I think not understanding that the friction is actually costing the business money is an unintended consequence.
Yeah.
And one that is neat to uncover. Like, that's exciting for me to uncover, right? Because that's a real number that translates across the business. It's not, I think sometimes marketing speak gets lost a little bit, right? We're going to asset managers and saying, like, we have to have a smoother process. And they're like, why? We're like, because it's the right thing to do. And they're like, what? Like,
Well,
that
and
doesn't move the needle. Like, money. Let's save money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's where having those defined KPIs that you're
100%,
tracking
yeah.
help, because you can say, okay, we've audited the process. We found these 4 different breakdown points.
Yes.
We fixed them. Now, what does that look like on the other side of this?
Yeah, that's a very fair point.
Yeah, the one of the books that made a huge impact on me about a year and a half ago. It's called "Great CEOs Are Lazy," and basically, what it talks about is most organizations you have all these fires burning, and many CEOs just try to go put out all the fires at once. They're like, "We got to fix everything at once."
Yeah.
And like the more effective CEOs are like, "Cool, where's the biggest fire? What's
Yeah.
the biggest kink in the hose? So let's move to a hose and just solve that first kink. There's no reason to solve the other 6 kinks yet, because you may have a kink down the line, like and you were talking about kind of like the leasing journey. You may have a kink at like closing, like maybe people don't close the sale very well. They don't handle it kind of, as you were talking about, Shelly, like they don't handle the script correctly. But I think you mentioned this, Brian, but you don't answer half your phone calls. So it's like the biggest kink in the hose is half the phone calls.
Yeah.
That all of a sudden changes. It's like doubling your marketing spend or something,
Yeah.
right? And so fix that kink before you worry too much about the closer. At some point, yes, you got to get to the closer aspect, but like, so anyways, if you follow that through, at some point, the problem's going to come back to the beginning, right, of the hose, where it's like, yep, we're now not answering 20% of our calls. Great, but it's not always the biggest. Well, you can't solve everything at once, and then that way you can actually notice the impact you're making.
Yeah. Well, and I also
I
think
like that.
too, when you have like, you got your leaky bucket with a bunch of holes, like you patch one and you start to see where the other one is, right?
Yeah.
So it's like
Yeah.
it starts to reveal, and as you go deeper and deeper, you're getting more and more optimized in the process, and that's what's going to smooth it out. But again, I mean, you're always going to find stuff, but it really does help to kind of keep plugging the holes as you go.
But have it be focused,
collected your-
prioritized.
Yep.
metaphor.
That makes sense.
And it's okay for that. That's the whole thing, is like if a company is growing, there are going to be things like there are growing pains.
Yes.
And so if you realize this is a very Simon Sinek thing, but it's an infinite game.
Yeah.
You can't win this game. It's just going to go on forever. So don't don't try to win it because you can't. Just solve one thing at a time and then realize what your impact is. And there's also a point in time back as you guys work with more asset managers or something where it's like marketing's in the hot seat right now, but later it might be operations
Yep.
or something,
I
right?
feel
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, and so then that's okay. It's like so even though marketing could always be optimized more, all of our stuff could always be optimized more. You might have these benchmarks that you guys were sort of referencing, where it's like, all right, once we get to, you were mentioning $5 a lead, and it's like once we get to $5 a lead, we don't want to mess it up.
Yeah.
Because we could
Mhm.
optimize something, and all of a sudden it breaks it, and now it's $11.
Yeah.
And so like let's chill and be happy at $5.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I know that's something I always struggle with, and it's because I think it's part of like, not to get super deep, but the culture we're in and everything, where you always feel like, oh, there's a winning path, and like I beat the game.
Mhm.
It's like a video game mentality of like, if we
Hmm.
do these things, then we win, and then everything's all good. But it's
Yeah.
really, it's not like that. It is infinite. There's
Yeah.
always going to be more to do and more to grow and more to like fix, and new problems erupt when you fixed other ones.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
Well, and it also dovetails into some of what we talked about too with like training your team. And part of the process is making sure that you're constantly training your teams on your process. And we have had these situations where something breaks down or the team's not doing something the way that we told them to do. But it's like, when did you tell them to do that? During that first week that they were at your company and they sat down and they watched like 50 bajillion videos and retained probably about 20% of the information and never mentioned it again. So you're mad at them for not following a process that
Yeah.
you yourself did not reiterate to them.
or
And-
not to interrupt.
Yeah, go
Or
ahead.
they're watching a training video from the vendor platform, but that doesn't jive with how you do things.
Yeah.
And then they're
Mm.
getting confused of like, wait, should I do the system way or
Mm-hmm.
the company way, or sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, we struggled with this because we got on Lessonly as our like element learning management system like years ago, and when we first launched it, it was great. Our team was like super amped, and they built lessons. I remember our paid media team made something like over 300 lessons in a quarter.
Wow.
And I was like, kick ass. And then next thing you know, like 4 months later, it's like the new hires are like messing things up. It's like, why? It's like, well, because there's like 7 lessons that haven't been updated because it's like
Yeah.
as we're growing, systems are changing. And so
Yeah.
then the team did a great job of over time. They're like, part of your job, new hire, is Brian, if you see something, say something. If something isn't jiving between 2 systems, it's now your job to update it.
Yeah.
And I
I
thought
like
that
that.
was like a great it's a great training exercise because it teaches them to be diligent,
Yeah.
and also it like takes the burden off of the director that now has like 30 people underneath them. It's like the director can't possibly keep track of all this stuff.
Totally. I was talking to someone this morning who has a system at their company where they created micro learnings. So it's like 3-minute videos and they incentivize their team to watch them. So it's not necessarily like they have to watch like 100 3-minute videos, but like every month, if you watch X amount, it's a contest to see how many of your team watch them or like how many you're doing, and that kind of incentivizes them. And I guess it's had some really good success with that
I love
company.
that.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. Have you guys ever used anything like Hey Taco or of those? It's basically like peer initiated like gratitude or feedback, like Brian's doing a killer job because he helped me when he didn't have to, and that was really helpful for our team. But then we talked to somebody yesterday. Let me give the proper attribution because their company's new. AppWork, Danny Black, and they're kind of like a Happy Co. Competitor. But what was interesting is she mentioned for the maintenance folks on her platform, they actually added a competition system where it's like for doing your job, you earn coins, and then those coins can get you a new tool belt or something like that. And what I liked about that is it was a lot of things. A lot of people, it's like you do your job, and that's my expectation, and I'm not going to give you an attaboy for doing your job, right? I'm only going to give you the attaboy for the thing that you do above and beyond. And this is more of like, no, you get to earn those attaboys for doing your normal
Yeah.
work throughout, and also if you go above and beyond. And that's very oh shoot, Daniel Pink, he wrote this book Drive, and it's
Yeah.
about how do you motivate employees. And he's like, there's intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, and most people think extrinsic. So like, let's throw a pizza party for Brian when his team does something above and beyond, but then your team can start to feel like, now I'm only going to do above and beyond things if I get the pizza party. I'm not going to do it otherwise. And what he points out in the book is you want a lot of intrinsic people on your team, people that like just giving Brian a nice pat on the back for doing above and beyond or whatever. That is actually more motivational and built a stronger team long term than those extrinsic sort of like competitions.
Yeah.
Which that's why I liked this idea from AppWork, is because you're getting that attaboys for doing your normal job too. So you're getting that motivation throughout the process. All right. Well, what did we miss about like what you guys had researched or pulled together?
Oh my gosh. Well, I think some kind of interesting data points that we included in there, like 89% of properties that were audited did not have complete Google business profiles. That's kind of a big data point. In those tried audits, I'm trying to remember, all like 45% had Google reviews that were below 4 stars, and we also had, just going to throw out all of the fun facts here.
Yes.
And then something like 50% of properties aren't doing any personalized early lead nurturing, I think is a big. I mean, we talk about the tech to team handoff, but it's really about how is the team receiving that lead and then acting on it. Those are the important points. And so when the prospect is getting thrown all of this technology at them, and that's really where it's important that there is a person that like steps in and then humanizes that process. And so there's no early pre-tour lead nurturing, and there's also a distinctive lack of nurturing after a prospect is toured as well. I think sometimes it's really tough as our teams assume, because there are automations out there, because there are those lead nurturing technologies in place, that it completely removes that from their role, that they no longer have to really nurture a lead. And that's, again, where I think like that training comes in of your teams. Like, yes, there is messaging in place to help get the prospect to you. There are tools in place to help get the prospect to you, but your job is to actually close on that lead.
Yeah. I did a secret shop in a city where they were looking to acquire a building a couple months ago. And I think I contacted 5 or 6 buildings, and only one of the buildings had just generic follow-up. And it was this one leasing agent. I don't remember her name, but like I remember iconically like the email and the phone call, because she read my message, and it was kind of a unique message because I wanted it to like stand out. And I said I was looking for maybe a 1-bed, maybe a 2-bed. I wasn't sure. I was moving cross country. I maybe was going to do a roommate if the price was right, maybe not. I don't really know the area. I can't really come to tour. It was like kind of weird. And maybe they knew I was secret shopping, maybe not. But one of the leasing agents, like, I felt like they took me seriously more than anyone else. They wrote a personalized email. They were like, I understand where you're at in your journey. I'm going to help you like figure out if a roommate choice is right for you, if what the unit type you're looking for. And then she sent like actual recommendations of the local area. And then she gave a phone call too afterwards. And I was like, just that one, it probably took her 5 minutes to write up and send like a couple Google links of like, here, learn about our area. But that stood out so much.
Yeah. And
More than any other.
Hired her away.
I know. I have her name in my email. So.
Yeah, lease that apartment. Yeah.
It was amazing though. And it wasn't a particularly expensive apartment building. It was just like your average, like probably Class B building, and that personalization really.
Yeah, it makes a difference.
It's funny that you mentioned. So yes, as consumers, right now I'm now starting to expect to be treated like a number for whatever reason. I think it's because of all these automations out there, and I'm not faulting them for it. But then when they do stand out, okay, I've got 2 examples. I'll choose the bigger one. We are planning. My mom's bucket list is a safari, and so she's been talking about this for, I guess, 60 years. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna take her on a safari this year. And so, but I didn't like. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know Africa, and I don't want to like.
That's a huge decision.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And thank you, Ann. I contacted 4 different I wasn't sure if it's called a travel advisor, travel agent.
Yeah.
I've now learned it's a travel advisor. And 3 of them were like, cool, it's going to be this tens of thousands of dollars. Would you like to move forward? And I'm like, what? This feels like a big decision. I was like, can we talk a little? And so Brian, I started to send messages kind of like yours, not like intentionally trying to I was like, here's the deal. Like, my mom is 78. my dad is 77. He can't really walk. Can he come? Like, yada, yada. And then it's like only the firm that like took the time to be like, I hear you. You said this. Was I like, all right, you're my folks, because these others just expected me to spend crazy money, or what felt like crazy money, to like do this trip, like kind of without a conversation.
That's the good thing about nowadays, though, because everything's treated like a number, and because there are so few customized experiences, it takes very little to stand out now. Even just saying like, "Hi, my name is blah blah blah. Can I help you in any way?" Or it doesn't take much, and you
No.
really elevate the crowd.
Yeah, and I think it's okay as well to identify that you use technology that is maybe AI or something like that, and then say, I'm the real person, and you can talk to me. Like you were talking to our AI assistant before, but I am the live person. And there are studies that have been done too that when people know that it's a bot, they actually interact with it differently than they do with a live person. I think their language gets more formal. Like they're really trying to adjust to who the bot is to try to get the bot to help them better. Whereas they don't necessarily have to do that with a real person who can process information a little bit differently.
I've gone through both ends of the spectrum. One where it's like, if it feels like a very sequential bot, I'm like, all right, I'm going to use just the words that I think will be in their support articles or whatever.
Right.
But then when I'm working with like a large language model, I am more, I feel less guarded, because I'm not like trying to like avoid judgment from like the person, where it's like back to this Safari thing where it's like, I don't really want to bring my dad, but like he's whatever. He kind of just goes wherever my mom goes and yada yada. So I was like, but I didn't want them thinking I was like insane for asking about bringing him, and like help me work through this family dynamic of how do I tell him no, like you can't come, but still give my mom her gift. So
that's something you can ask ChatGPT.
I worked a little bit on my script with that, but I also from the advisor I ended up going with, they were able to help me too.
I feel like I had a conversation recently with ChatGPT where it's like, "Can you believe this?" And they're like, "I know." I'm like, "Just become best."
Yeah, thank you, Bessie. Well, thank you. This was really incredible. If people, well, let's go down the line. Shelly, if people want to get more of this information, do you guys have it available? Like, can they email you for it?
Yeah, they can email me at shelly@cadencems.com. They can also go to cadencems.com. That has all the information on our stride reports, and you can even actually order a stride directly from our website if you're looking to do more of a deep dive on your property and your marketing. But that's the best way to get a hold of me or to learn more about Cadence.
Cool. And then Brian, if people really connected with, with your language and they want to get with you?
I blab a lot on LinkedIn, so you can connect with me on LinkedIn. Brian Rosenblatt, you'll find me there.
Awesome. And
Same LinkedIn. If you want to talk about KPIs, data, interpreting data, or you just want to talk in general, get in touch.
I'm also on LinkedIn too.
Yes.
Oh, really? Okay.
No, I'm the only person that's not on LinkedIn. No, I am actually on LinkedIn. I'm there.
Yeah.
Come find me.
Well, thanks you folks. That was great.